Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Criminal Justice Corner. Here at Criminal Justice Corner, we give you the real details surrounding the case. And just in case you find yourself in that same situation, we give you potential actionable advice so that you can potentially get yourself out of it. I am your host, Dr. Jennifer Matthews, and today I have with me a very special guest, Julie Barth. Julie is going to tell us a very unique story about things that she's experienced in her life. Julie, can you give us a little backstory about yourself?
Sure. I am the mother of six, and I am the founder of a charity that takes care of women in crisis. The reason why I started the charity is because of my backstory. I I have a daughter with special needs. I lost my first husband. She has primordial dwarfism, so she's 24 years old and she's 24 pounds. But her history was very long and involved. So it was about 4 years full of surgeries and trying to get her to a point where she had a trach. Um, and I was married to my grammar school sweetheart, and he was my first kiss, and we were just happy enough to find each other after college. Um, After I had Tatum, who was my special needs daughter, and fighting to get her where she was at, I proceeded to have two other children. Right after everything started clearing up, Tatum got her trach out, uh, almost the skies cleared, and just stopped acting like he normally did. We were best friends, and all of a sudden, he just was not himself at all. So
And Colin's your
we were having a
husband
huge,
at the time,
my first husband, yes, yes.
your first husband.
And he was, yes, and he was he was always very jovial, and he just wasn't. There was something that was missing. So we were having a huge party, as we always did, because we had a huge community presence. And I told him to go to the hospital, just figure out what's going on and, just take care of yourself. And within 4 hours, I was called to the hospital. He was diagnosed with stage four pancreatic cancer. So, um, yeah, so they gave him 2 weeks to live. And fortunately, he ended up living 16 months. They were, some of them were a blessing, others were not so much. But it was a long 16 months, and I had these little kids running around. And after he passed, people were just starting to grieve. And I was in a position where, everyone around me was feeling this gravity, and I was almost feeling like I had sat in it for 16 months and I couldn't do it anymore. And I met a gentleman who was working in my home, and it was about a year after, so it wasn't immediately after, but I met him and I thought, you know, uh, he just seemed like the perfect person. You know, I
Hmm.
I was fortunate enough to have inherited some money from my first husband, which obviously was nothing compared to what I was dealing with. But I wasn't bound to where I was at. I had family, I had friends, but I just couldn't sit in that sorrow anymore. So I kind
Mm-hmm.
of met him and thought, okay, well, I would like to still have other children anyway. He was younger than me. He
Hmm.
didn't he didn't want to hear about my past. He didn't want to hear about my grief. When everyone else was saying, please, Julie, slow down. I want you to grieve. I want you to think about it. Take some time. Where I was like, nope, I don't want to talk about it. I want to put it behind me. I don't want to think about it. I just want to carry
So
forward.
he was like on the
And
same page as you.
he told me a story that he hated where he lived. He was a contractor near us, and he told me how he had remodeled homes. He made it sound as if he had, built himself from zero and was very successful, but had hit a downturn, and that was kind of where we connected. He was telling me he had just lost his fiance. He broke up with his fiance while he was working in my home, and kind of, saying this
How
sad
long had he worked
story.
in your home? How long had he worked in your home?
Probably about 6 months. When I had first met him when he was working in the house, he was engaged. So it was hands off. Like I don't. I wanted, we were friends and I would say hey, but when I found out that he was engaged and he was much younger than me, so I thought there's absolutely
Hmm.
nothing to this. I've got my own,
Okay.
you know, got my own past. I've got my own things going on. But he came one day and said that his girlfriend had cheated on him and he was no longer going to marry her. And he was so sad about it and said his, family had left him. He was, alone in our city together. He didn't have anyone. And it was almost as if I was like, oh, I'm, feeling alone. And, he kept saying, I want to get out of here. I don't want to live here anymore. People here are just so judgmental. And I mean, just everything he said, I was kind of feeling at the time, probably unwarranted, but I was in a situation where, I felt like I was suffocating. So, I can't really tell you whether it was my idea, whether it was his idea. It was a combined idea to just pick up, leave everything behind. Like as I said, I had some money.
And you with your
So
children.
I
And
was
you
with
with
my
your
four
children. How
children.
many children did you have at this time?
I had four children at the time. And yeah, and I'd always wanted a big family. And looking back on it, I'm sure this is probably why everyone rolled their eyes at the time. I wanted another child. I lost Colin, and I kind of felt like my road to redemption would be to create life. And my ex-husband was all on board, and everyone else was looking at me like this is a really bad idea. And I wouldn't listen. I was like, well, either you're in with me or I you're out. And so I kind of just, and everything he was feeding me sounded like the perfect plan. You're broken, I'm
Okay.
broken. You're gonna love
Let's
my
be
children,
broken
you're gonna
together, so to
save
speak.
me. Let's save each other, like let's go
Yeah.
somewhere and start over. You're a successful contractor. I don't necessarily have to work, but I was a writer at the time. So I was like, I can do small jobs, stay home with the kids, you can work. This is, it was a dream to me. And again, the thing that I loved the most was that um, um, he said that, he was a successful contractor and he loved the fact that I didn't want to talk about stuff. He never wanted me to talk. He never asked me about me, and where I guess I should have, felt like, don't you really care about like the fact that I have four kids? Like it doesn't bother you, or like you don't care that I'm just picking up and leaving my family. He seemed to be totally okay with it. So,
No,
it
at
made
that
sense.
time, but at that time, because I understand you guys are picking up and leaving everything behind and going off into the sunset. At that time, did you have any romantic feelings for him?
Oh, yeah, I mean, he was 10 years older than me. I just thought he was
Younger.
this younger, sorry. I just thought he was this cutest, he had these puppy dog eyes and like it was just, I think I needed a project to save. And
Mm,
yes, I adored him. I literally probably, I wanted him to be the next Colin. But I, he wasn't everything that I remember him to be, but I had put that on him, that he was this, great guy and he was really, really cute. I mean, very cute.
and so
Um,
he was kind of living in Colin's shadow in your mind,
yeah, or,
so to
not
speak.
his shadow, but I think it was like I found my new Colin.
Okay.
I kind of felt like it started almost the same. Colin and I kind of met up and we were just like we were friends, and then oh well, gosh, we fell in love, and it was kind of a whirlwind thing. So yeah, I mean, I thought he had a lot of qualities that Colin had because Colin was very sarcastic.
Mm,
He was witty, and wouldn't go so far as to say he was offensive because he did know, like he could read a room, but he also was very honest.
okay.
And my second husband was also very honest, but did not know how to read a room. And what I didn't see at the time is he was very offensive. He was very
Uh,
he would love to incite people. And everything he would do along the way I would excuse, and so
okay.
he did. He made my friends very upset. He would just say very outlandish things to get people to react. And I stopped hanging out with people because I always had to make excuses for him. And, although I felt embarrassed about it, I was like, oh, he's just kidding. He would do what Colin would do, but then Colin would know, okay, I pushed this too far, or I'm not going to go any further. And he would take
Hmm.
it and go from 0 to 100. Um,
So the red flags, you saw them, but you were like
yeah.
ignoring them.
I
Okay.
was, yeah. Yeah, I was downplaying them, and of course, anytime anyone said anything bad about him, that defensive part of me would come up and say, like, oh, no, no, no. Um, so the gentleman that he worked for, which is why he was working in my house, was trying to go out with me, and I just didn't
What?
like him. Well,
So
this
his
is like
boss,
before I was dating
basically.
him, his boss.
Right.
So,
His boss, basically.
yeah, so when we started dating, it got to a point, down a couple of months down the line, we were hiding it, and we ended up going downtown and Chicago and spending the night. And I had someone watching the kids and everything, but I came home and he snuck to work in the morning and was still lying to his boss. And his boss was saying things like, "Oh, well, I guess she just like didn't care, I guess she's just going to go out and like do whatever and not come home and care for her kids." And he never, I heard it, I overheard him, and he didn't defend me. He didn't say, oh, no, it's me. I'm the one dating her. And so I think that was just like the first, huh, like, because he was lying to him. And so
Right.
I remember confronting him and saying, hey, I understand that you're afraid you're going to lose your job, but it's gone far enough now. Like if we're dating and this is it, then you need to. So he did end up telling him. Well, then his boss came to me probably about a couple weeks later, and he was saying, "Well, I can understand why you would want to be with him since he's a trust fund baby." And I was like,
Ooh.
what do you mean? And he was like, he's a trust fund baby. I'm like, no, he's not. He built his houses and he is a contractor and he's built from the bottom up. And he's like, no, Julie, he is a trust fund baby. His parents bought the house. He is pretending to redo homes. And of course, I was like, you're just being ugly. Like, you might have money, you might come from ugly, but you're just mad because I'm going out with him. But that was, and a lot of those things started happening. A lot. We went on vacation together. We
So
came
he
home and
told you,
yes,
so
he
he
told
told
me that he
you,
had,
technically, allegedly, the truth, and you were like, no, this is not true. I'm still gonna believe what he was saying.
yes, yes. And
Oh my
his
gosh.
parents, well, his parents did not live anywhere near us. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that he probably admitted that his parents did have money, but he still went with, but they don't support me. And and he went through the whole, I bought this house from a friend and I redid this house and I did all the plans. And, I think that it sounded like it was a lot easier to go along with. And I was at this point already pregnant because I had gotten pregnant and we were
You're in the thick of it
headlong.
now.
Yeah, and we were headlong, I had to leave town because first of all, he didn't want me to tell anyone I was pregnant. Second of all, he didn't want, we did IVF, right? So it was planned. It wasn't as if I just like, oops. But of course, he didn't tell his parents that. So while he's telling me that they're not supporting him, he's telling them that he doesn't that I just, got pregnant and he didn't know, how it happened and basically painting me. And I didn't know this till years later, painting me as this like Black Widow woman that has like
Preyed
stolen
on
his
him.
youth. Yeah, I mean, just yeah, like stole his youth and like and this came out many years later. But that I had trapped him. That was the thing. I trapped him. So we end up leaving together. We go to North Carolina and we proceed to have my first daughter. And then my daughter Tatum with special needs ended up getting cancer. And our relationship was pretty rocky anyway. And I just, there was a very big disconnect. The minute we got to North Carolina, well, first of all, the house that he wanted to get we looked at 30 houses. And the only house that he would agree on, although it was my money, the only house, and I paid for all of it, he wanted this house that was up in the middle of nowhere. It was up, and granted, it was beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but it was like up in a mountain. It had a pool. It was beautiful, but it was so isolated. There was no one around us.
But
So
why? But why was it your money if he, one, quote unquote, is a trust fund baby technically, but two, he is a successful contractor? Why is it your money?
because it was the crash of 2000. This was in 2009. So the crash of 2007 had happened. And he said, I lost everything. I lost my shirt. I
Oh
have
my.
nothing. I have nothing. And he couldn't sell his house. So he said that his parents owned the house. I guess it was my
Excuse
fault.
after
Like,
excuse.
excuse me, and I was so ready to be out of there and so in love. And I have this baby. And yeah, so I was like, fine, let's just, and it was a beautiful house. And I was like, I'm leaving all that in the past. I don't even care what happened. I don't care where his money is. And I had this like thought, I had this feeling about it, like these are my children, like how did I can't ask somebody to pay for my children, because at four, it was just the four children when we did it. And I was like, it's my responsibility to take care of my children.
But
So
you
I
were
did. I
pregnant
bought the
too,
house.
so technically five
I was.
children.
Yeah, you would think, but yeah, so and but that was what happened. Like I kind of established that I would take care of things because they were my kids, and I just assumed when the other children came along that he would, you know, be a dad. Um
Okay.
yeah. So he started exactly, I know it sounds crazy. I'm telling this story now. Um But so we get to North Carolina, and I'm crazy with the baby. Now I have a baby. I have four kids, children who are kind of grieving, and then I have a special needs daughter who now has cancer, and he's nowhere to be found. We're up
What do
on
you
this
mean he's
mountain.
nowhere to be found?
I don't know. He would like leave in the morning, and he wouldn't come home until late at night. And if I would ask where he was going, he would absolutely explode on me, like I'm not coming home. You can't tell me where to be. You don't control me. And at first, it was just him being nasty. And I would, so I was so I had just come off of losing my first husband, and I had a lot of attachment issues. And so the minute I would say, like, you need to come home, he would threaten to leave me. And he would be like, I'm just going to leave you and you're going to be nowhere. And so I just kind of let him get away with whatever he wanted. And he
Now, were
was
you guys
going,
married at this point?
um, we married about 4 months. When my daughter had cancer, I kind of put my foot down and I said, if we're going to be like, we need to be married, or this needs to end because I can't do this anymore, because I had had suspicions that he wasn't being honest with all that he was doing. First we get there, he didn't get a job, he got nothing, he would disappear all day long, and he would say like, oh, I'm doing the driveway, and there was a shop at the bottom of our where we lived, and he said, I'm going to restore cars. So he then starts this restoration company, which I pay for. And so, of course, he's got to spend all of his time in the barn restoring cars. So that was his excuse. When I said, where are you? He'd say, well, I need to earn our money back. And, nothing's going on anyway. You can take care of them. And it started just being with him being nasty. And then it turned into when he would come home, he would like he would break things in front of me when he got really mad. He like my favorite chair. There was a very special chair that Colin used to sit in when he was really sick, and it was very important. He broke it in front of me. He broke bar stools in front of me. He would, grab me, pretend he was grabbing me around the neck and say like, "Oh, if I could just," and it just became, it became a very threatening atmosphere. And so by this time, we had two children together. I have the four. Things are falling apart. He's nowhere to be found. He's taking jobs out of town. I'm blowing through all my savings because now I've,
Yeah.
purchased this, I've purchased a restoration car business that he decided he didn't want to do. I think he only had one job the entire time. And, it was almost as if he was supposed to like be fixing up our house, but he never did. So I just got to like this, we got to get out of here. I can't do it anymore. But as I'm sitting in the house taking care of all the kids, he has
Okay.
been going back home from where we're from and telling everyone we
What?
know. He was visiting back. He probably went on 7 trips home when I didn't go
And
because
without
I,
you.
without me. Yeah, to visit
And
friends.
didn't tell you.
No, he told me well, he would tell me like I'm going to so and so's bachelor party or I'm going to, and I didn't want to go back home. So as upset as I was, I had lost all control of what he did. And to be honest, I was kind of like, when he's not here, I at least can just do me and not worry about it. Well, he was going
Okay.
back home and he was telling everyone that I knew, everyone that we know, that I was crazy, that I was insane, that I was broken, that I was stealing his money, that I was literally, he was like, she's insane. I think she's mentally ill. He was telling them that I had personality disorders. He was showing them text messages that we would send back and forth when I got mad. He then made friends with everyone around us on this mountain. There weren't many people around us, so we're like 3 or 4. But when we would go places, he would be like, "Hey, Ron, and I would be like, "How do you know these people?" And he'd be like, "Oh, I meet them when I'm outside." He had made friends with all of the people on the mountain and told everyone that I was insane. So he would say he was down at the shop. But the whole time he is running around making a little life for himself, telling everyone that his wife is crazy, that, he had bought this house for me, that I was insane, that all I did was yell at him. And then if I would yell at him, he wouldn't come home at night. So then I got really scared to even yell at him because he'd never come home. And again, a lot of this is on me and my, you know, eh, let's just say he found somebody who was terribly in grief and he knew every single one of my buttons, Push, like every single one of them. So
He
when
kind of
I
preyed on
just
you, technically.
100%. I mean, he had a pattern of exactly how he would control me. He would not come home. He'd say he was coming home, then I'd ask, "Where are you?" And then he'd say, "I don't have to tell you." And then I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, why are you not?" And then he'd be like, "See, you're crazy. I'm not coming home." And then he'd say, "I'm not coming home." And then I would freak out like, "Oh my gosh, I'm up on this mountain by myself. I will have nobody." Because none of my friends back home were talking to me and I didn't know why. Like I had nobody and I was just sitting on this
They
mountain with
wouldn't
all
even
these
talk to
kids.
you?
I suppose if I like I when I say they wouldn't talk to me, I guess I decided to just let it go. I did hear whispers, I heard rumors about what was going on, and I had very good friends. His One of my best friends ended up in a relationship with his brother. So when that happened, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I felt like I was constantly trying to say, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. And when you say I'm not crazy enough, people are like, sure you're not,
You're crazy.
you're
Yeah.
crazy. Cause like that, they probably were like, I don't even know why you keep saying you're not crazy. Like, why are you on this all the time? So I just, we were on this mountain. I wanted to get out of there. And I wanted to go back to Chicago. And he said, "You can't go to Chicago. You don't have any family there. You don't have any friends." And I kind of felt like he was right. So I I ended up moving along with him to the next house, which was by
And
his
where was that?
parents'
Like what
house.
city?
It's in South Carolina.
Okay, that's because you were first in Chicago, then North Carolina, then
No,
South Carolina.
in South Carolina. Yeah.
So with all this turmoil, you thought
And
it was
his
a good
parents
idea to
are
go
here.
to the next place.
Well, his parents were here. And
Okay.
they made it sound as a group effort. They made it sound that if we came to South Carolina, everything was going to be great. They were going to pay for my kids' private school because I was like, the schools in South Carolina are terrible. Oh no, no, we want it. We'll pay for your school, everyone's private school because they're very wealthy. If you just move here, and I had left so many friends and I saw it as, and I didn't really know his parents well enough that I thought, you know, then I'll have family around, because they were the grandparents to my two littlest. And I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to, make family. And I was like, when all the stress is off and we have community, then, maybe all of this is just stress and chaos and Tatum's cancer. And, I was so caught up in the whirlwind, the chaos of it, that I thought if we found a place that was better, less isolated, with people around, new people, that things would just be better. So we found a house here, and the deal was that I would buy the house, and he wanted to be a contractor here because that's what he does. So he would fix up the house, and when we moved here, we would live in it, and then that would prove that he was a contractor and he could build his business in South Carolina. Um, so that's how we ended up here. And we bought a beautiful house, and it's, in a great historic area. But it was just more of the same when we moved here. And I
Did
think
they pay
it
for your
just
kids' schooling, the parent?
they did. So we moved here, and for the first 2 years we were here, things were okay. They really were. Like, I was trying to make a connection with his parents, and they didn't like me. It was very apparent, but I can get along with anyone. And I thought, well, and I'll be honest, I was like, I don't know if I would be happy that my son, came home and said, I'm marrying this woman who's 10 years older than me, and she's got 4 kids. I might say, I don't know if that's a good idea. So I always gave them the benefit of the doubt. Like, you know, we got here and they made it sound like they wanted to be family. And I arranged that we would go to their house every Sunday. And, I really did try and like forge this family. And things were bad, but they weren't what they were in North Carolina. And then he was very abusive to one of my sons, emotionally, verbally. And then his mother got involved, and there was a whole thing about the private school. And so she took me to lunch one day and she said, um, if you can, if you can spend all of your money all of his money vacationing, then I think that you should probably pay for your kids' private school. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And she said, well, since he's working his butt off, and you're just off vacationing all the time and spending his money, then maybe I think that we're not going to pay for private school anymore. And I was like, what do you mean I'm spending all of his money? And she said, well, he said that like you're just bleeding him dry. And mind you, he never paid a dime for anything, anything. In fact, he was charging me to do work on my own house, which I didn't know.
What?
Um,
How, and you
yeah,
were paying it?
he would say that the bills were this, but they weren't that. He was putting a contractor's fee on top of what he was doing. But like the deal was that I thought he was, paying his way by doing his work, but he was hiring people to do it, saying he was doing it. And so I had it out with his mom, because at that point I'm like, what are you talking about? And then things just like the gig was up. From that point on, things just completely started unraveling. And I, found out that when we got married,
So
his
did you tell
parents
her
had
that it
given
wasn't
him,
true?
oh yeah, oh yeah. And I said, he has never given me a dime. And she said, well, then what is he doing with all of his money? And I said, I don't know, you tell me. And she chose not to believe me. By this time, I had found out and figured out that he had a very severe drug habit. He was taking money from his parents. He was taking money from me. He was taking money from his parents, converting it to coins, and they were actually helping him because they were trying to hide money from me in case we got divorced. So all this craziness is going on, and I'm just literally trying to raise my children. I had gotten a job. I was just I ditched out of the entire marriage. I was making nice because I always knew in the back of my head that it was going to get ugly, because by the time I found out all the things he was doing, which I probably will never find out everything he did, I also knew he was plotting and he was planning. And so he left the first time, and we were supposed to be divorced. And then I think about 6 months into it, he came back and said, I need to stop drinking. I'm sorry. I want to be with my children. And of course, I'm me. So I was like, okay, well, we'll give it a try. And after he came back, he started taping everything I did. He must have so he started taping everything I did. He was sending out all the text messages. He was, purposely pushing my buttons, getting me to react. And he was videotaping me, sending it to his friends. So when I finally, the day came when I was like, that is it, I'll be at 10 years too late. You need to get out. I'm done. I can't do this. And I went to see a lawyer and I sat down with a lawyer. I told him everything. I said he's got a drug problem. And by this point he had taken a job out of town, so he didn't even really live with us. I was able to just separate myself for almost 2 years before we got divorced. But I went to see the lawyer and I had this long conversation. I told him everything, and he was like, "Yeah, he's just really bamboozled you." And um, I get home and I get a call from his office, and they're like, "Yeah, we can't represent you." And I said, "What do you mean you can't represent me?" And they said, "Oh, your husband came to see us over 2 years ago and what do you call it? Retained us." So he had gone to this lawyer, told the lawyer. The lawyer said to him, "You're not going to get anything." So he came back saying, "I'm sorry, I'm not going to drink anymore," and did exactly what the lawyer said he needed to do in order to come after me. So all those 2 years that I, let things lie, and he kept saying he was going to sign papers. He kept saying, because we had an agreement, and he said, "I don't want anything. I just want out of this." And I was like, fantastic. If you, and I even offered him money. I said, if you, just to go away. Um, but he came after me and he said that I was an alcoholic, I was a drug addict. He told the court that I was an unfit mother. I mean, he came for me. He had me followed. He was dating other people. I was dating other people. He was in a whole different city, and the whole time he was having me followed by a PI so that he could say that the whole reason he was saying we needed to get divorced is because I was committing adultery. And in the state of South Carolina, you need an entire year to be separated. And if you see anyone within that year period, that's grounds for adultery, which I didn't know. So he came back, you know. Um, so I went through the whole system. I obviously ended up winning. I have sole custody. He's not allowed to see the kids. There's a lot of repair that's gone on, but yeah, I never thought that yeah.
So how long were you with him total?
A total of 10 years. Yeah, 10 long years of my life.
I about to say that had to be the longest 10 years of your life.
Well, no, because I had I had the one before that with my daughter and losing my first husband. And to be honest with you, I don't think I would have headed into the second chapter of my life and been so, you know, blind, I guess, or dumb, whatever you want to call it, if I did not have the issues coming off of everything that I did with the first. So
Wow. So after all of that, what steps did you take to like heal your family? To put you guys like back together mentally, emotionally?
Well, the good news is that he never was around. And when I say never, I mean really never. So, when I say we were together for 10 years, the last 3 years, we weren't even living together. The 7 years before that, he wasn't really living with us. And we didn't do a whole lot of fighting in front of people. We did a lot of text fighting. So, putting our family back together, I would say it was really me and the kids. It's always been me and the kids. I raised them from the time they were born. There was some, like I said, there was emotional abuse between my son and him, and so there were a lot of issues that we needed to work on. I had to say, because my son also is very sensitive, and I did have to admit at some point, because I used to make excuses and say, like, he's just,
Yeah.
you got to toughen up. So yeah, there was a lot of, I'm sorry I didn't acknowledge it. I'm sorry that I was trying to make everything nice, and I put your feelings aside and I didn't protect you. um and I think a lot of the recovery is coming now still. The house is peaceful. My children don't see him anymore. Everyone is aware of the truth of the situation. I left my past in my past for real, because a lot of those people that didn't give me the voice to speak, or were so willing to just assume that I turned crazy when they had known me my entire life. I had to let that go. It's not my responsibility to explain the hell that I went through. And so I think that was probably the hardest part. And I think that's why a lot of people stay in these situations, because here I am telling you this. And as I'm telling you this, I'm
Hmm.
cringing, because I'm like, I'm talking and I'm like not believing that, not even believing myself that I did it. But when you're in it, you can't
Yeah.
see outside of it, like You're so
Right.
tunnel visioned on doing something that you don't see all. So, I think everybody watches these true crime things or Dirty Harry or and you think, oh God, I would never. I mean, if any,
Yes.
I had nursed my husband, I had taken care of 4 kids. I had a master's degree, I have a bachelor's degree. I consider myself, I built a career on my own. Like, I am not a stupid woman. And when I look at that stuff, it's so easy from the outside to be like, wait, what did you do? And I get that, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. You're like, how
And
do I do all of this?
yeah, and I think that's why I'm out here telling my story because saying it is like, oh my God, lady, what are you even kidding? Like, why didn't you? Why didn't you? Why didn't you? And I can't tell you why I didn't, but I will tell you that it's really easy from the outside. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people in my position, we hide our stories and we
Yes.
stay in marriages because we don't want people to know the stupid things we've done. And if you expose somebody else, you have to expose yourself.
Absolutely. Now, how old is your oldest child?
He is 27 now.
And then how old is your youngest child?
She's 12.
Okay. Okay. So you have like a good range of children.
I do. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So so are all of them still at home, or some have some left the nest? How does that dynamic work?
I only have 2 more left at home. One
Okay.
is in college. The other two are out on their own. One's married and one's living with a significant other.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that gives you a little like relief, if you will, so that you're, not don't have the whole family under your roof anymore. So that's kind of helpful, right?
It is. It is. They've never really been a burden. If anything, if they were not in my world, I think that it would have been a lot worse. I think that the distraction of them and knowing that no matter what came my way, I had to take care of them first.
Mm-hmm.
It is quiet now and living in
Right.
quiet. Yeah, I think living in quiet is hard to get accustomed to because things have been
Yeah.
so chaotic for so many years. So
Chaotic, right?
yeah,
With everything
yeah.
going on. And they call it like the empty nest syndrome, but you still have the two children, the two younger children at home. So that's helpful, but it I guess changes the dynamic is what I'm trying to say. The
Yes,
dynamics
yeah, yeah.
change. That's what I'm
Yes,
trying to say.
definitely. I
Yeah.
by far my um my very worst day today is 100 times better than my very best day,
Mhm.
4 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. Now, considering everything that you went through, considering everything that we talked about today, what would you tell a listener out there who is listening to this podcast, who is possibly going through something that you went through? What would you tell them? What would be something that you would think would help them right now?
I think 2 things. One is that I got very concerned. I stayed in a lot of situations that I did because I was so concerned about what people would think of me and
Okay.
the decisions I made and how people would judge that and how they would see me. And, I think that coming to terms with the fact it really doesn't matter what people think or how they feel about me. I'm not responsible for how you feel about me. If I
Absolutely.
made a if I'm good with me and I know I'm a good person, you can think I'm crazy. You can think I'm whatever you want.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore. And I think the other thing is that sometimes, like I said, you do get so tunnel visioned and overwhelmed by like, oh my gosh, if this happens, I have to take care of all of this stuff. And
Yeah.
that'll keep you stuck in something. If you just take it day by day by day and
Hmm.
recognize that, there were many nights when I lied awake thinking I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose it. And it would just keep me stuck, keep me awake. And then when I got on the other side of it, I recognized that the things that I lost were not the things that I thought they were, or the things that I needed, or even the things I wanted. Most of those things that I thought I needed were the very things that were keeping me stuck. So, when you think, getting out of a situation looks way worse than staying in it, just you only have one life. And if you lose it all, the things that you're going to lose are probably the things that you really don't want anyway, because otherwise you'd be happy. If they were making you happy and you were, needed to hold on to them, then you would be happy.
Yeah. And I want to add, because Sometimes I add takeaways, sometimes I don't. But just listening to your story, I want to add that if someone else is in your situation, two things. The first thing is you are enough. You are enough. Because, like you were saying, he was saying, I'm going to leave you. And guess what? That's okay.
Yeah.
Some women feel like I'm nothing if I don't have a man by my side. And I'm here to tell you that's okay. You are enough by yourself, with or without a man. You can have one and that's great, and you can not have one and that's okay too. Because guess what? You are enough. So that would be my first takeaway. My second takeaway would be tell somebody. Because a lot of times as women, we just keep things in, we don't release it. Like you were saying, your friends turned their backs on you. And possibly, had you reached out to them, they might have listened, they might not have. So, find someone that you can confide in. It doesn't have to be a lot of people, it doesn't have to be, a family member, but find somebody that you can confide in, because that might be the person that can help walk you out of that situation. Because when you feel alone, then you kind of internalize that and be like, I'm alone, I can't do this. But if you have somebody listening to you, they're like, girl, you can do this. It's okay. That
Yeah.
kind of thing, like a support system. So I would say those two things: you are enough, and tell a friend, because that just might be the push you need to say, I can do better.
Yeah.
I deserve better. That kind of
Yeah.
thing. Because I know me as a woman, I have that support system, and I tell you, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
So that would
I would
be
agree.
my takeaway.
And and looking at the entirety of the situation too, if somebody's asking you to leave your family behind, to leave all your friends behind, to isolate you, don't do
Absolutely.
it. It's not going to be
Yes.
you and them against the world. That is, it sounds very romantic, but if someone wants you to leave everyone in your past behind, it's probably not a good idea.
Look, they are plotting.
Yeah, there's a reason
They,
why they want you
it,
alone. Never, it's probably not good.
yes,
Yeah.
it's not for heroic efforts.
No,
They are
no, you're not
plotting.
going to
They
be
have
whisked.
something up
Yeah,
their
yes,
sleeve.
yes, they definitely do. Yeah, and
They will.
listen to
You will
your
not live
gut,
in a
Yeah,
right.
definitely listen to
That
your
you
gut.
will
Yeah.
not. Yes, you will not live on that castle in the sky. It will not be that when you get there.
No. Well, it was a castle in the
No matter.
sky, but like I was no prince. I mean, I was no queen in that. So,
Right.
yeah,
So no, I appreciate that. I appreciate your insight. I appreciate you sharing your story, because seriously, it can help somebody else. It is so many people experiencing your story and similar stories. Their story could be less like your situation, but even more like your situation. So you just coming out and telling your story, being courageous and releasing that to other people going through that situation, it could be liberating for them. So I just thank you for sharing today.
no problem. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I mean that's it. That is the way that I see life. Like if you do something and you had to go work really hard to get through it, then soften it for the next person that comes through.
Absolutely. I totally, totally agree. So, again, thank you so much for sharing your story, Julie. You're welcome to come back anytime, especially if you have some more tidbits, because sometimes you think about stuff, you're like, you know what? I want to tell this part. I left that part out. So, you're always welcome to come back. And I want to thank
Sounds
our
good.
listeners out there. Yes. I want to thank our listeners. If you have not already done so, please like, subscribe, and share. Tell a friend to tell a friend about Criminal Justice Corner, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.